And anybody's in the gallery, if they've got questions to ask, when you ask the questions, if you go to the mic up there for the sake of those that are listening to it, so that they can hear what you're saying as well. Move right along. First of all, for our record of attendance, we're all here tonight, so there's obviously no leave of absence or apologies. 2, confirmation of minutes of previous meeting held on the 15th of August. No, I'm sorry, it's obviously in July, so 15th of July. And so there's a recommendation there, which includes the extra that Councillor Blizzard had actually realised wasn't in there. So somebody prepared to move that motion with that addition.
Yeah, so moved, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Blizzard. Second?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Kay, has any queries on the minutes at all? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Item 3, 3-1 nil. 3-2 is responses to councillor questions received in writing. There's one there from a few months back, because we were waiting for the information. Happy with the response there, Councillor Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, okay, sorry. We come down now to 3-4, councillor questions without notice. Are there any councillor questions without notice?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have one. What's the council policy on ropes over country roads where a farmer may have a rope over the road, but instead of taking it down when the cars across, they're leaving it up all day? So it's on a council road, and I was just wondering what's the council policy on
Is it
that?
in the air or just on
Beg
the
your
ground?
pardon?
Lying on the bitumen or on the road? Or
No, it's actually across the road, so you can't drive or you wouldn't walk with it.
Daniel would be the...
Yep, through you, Mr. Mayor, it actually applies under the road rules, and I'm happy to catch up with Councillor Kay afterwards around the details, but as I recall, for taking stock across the road with a rope or other, it needs to have a physical person attending that during that time and not be left up. But certainly happy to catch up with Councillor Kay and get some further details on that one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? No further questions. I'll go on to 4, declaration of pecuniary interests, and I have one on 11.2.
I have been closed 1410. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any...
And Mr. Mayor, I have one in 10.1, 11.1 and 11.2. One's a possible pecuniary interest, I think that's 11.2, and the other 2 are non-pecuniary interest.
Thank you. Non-pecuniary interest, 9, yes.
Yep.
Mine on 11.2 is non-pecuniary.
Yep.
And Councillor Woodward?
Non-pecuniary, yeah. In 1410. In
1410.
Yeah.
Non-pecuniary.
Yes.
Non-pecuniary as well, Councillor Woodward. you. We come down now to 5, 6 and 7, and again we'll be moving this as on a block, and then we'll be going through those reports as well. So somebody prepared to move the recommendation?
So moved, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Rice Harris, seconded. Councillor Redwood. Is there any discussion on that? I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. We'll go down to 5 now, the notification of council workshops. Councillor Rowley.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. On the second workshop, which was on the 13th, he was unavoidably late for that workshop. There wasn't a lot of discussion on the other appointment management minutes that was here, and I wondered whether we could have that at the next available time. And could you enlighten this council, Mr Mayor, on your meeting about Hunter Island, please?
The Hunter Island hasn't happened yet. It was supposed to be this week, but we put off because we couldn't, people couldn't come. So that is now on the 31st of August, so I can bring you up to speed with that when we have that meeting on the 31st of August. Anything else on the meetings there? The first one we can talk about at the next time, and one with the...
Well, there was a couple of things in it we did.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Nothing else on that? We'll go down then to the Mayor's communications. Obviously, again, the Hunter Island meeting hasn't happened yet because it was delayed. Nothing else on that?
Yes,
Councillor Rowley?
I understand that you met this week with Taswater. What was the verdicts from there?
Taswater, yes, we had a hook-up with the quarterly report, General Manager himself. Probably the biggest issue was that the revaluation was done over the last little while, which was not pretty, in that they did an evaluation 2 years ago, and then they did another one with all their items, and then another one only recently, and the difference between the two was about 225 million, roughly, which is concerning, without a lot of reasons why. And so obviously there's going to be a few questions asked, and I would expect that because of that, they're probably less likely to see dividends for a bit longer than what we first saw. I might be wrong, so probably can't give alarm too much yet, but that was probably the major issue that we had coming out of that meeting.
Does those valuations, does that take into account, Mr Mayor, if the costs of, say, Lake Makani, where it's been extraordinarily raised from what the dividends were? I use Lake Makani as an example, but there's plenty of other places around, like Alonso and Sewerage and all those sort of things. There's plenty of others around the state where they've been extraordinary, some of the figures that have been quoted.
Well, my understanding is the current assets that's under the ground, which this hasn't not been finished yet, so that wouldn't even be part of it at all. That would be my understanding. It would be yours as well.
That is correct, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Woodward.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. You had a meeting down at Dismal Swamp, and I know there's been quite a bit of information in the press. Is there any more information you can give us coming out of that meeting?
No, not really, because I think pretty well everything that we looked at, obviously, is going to be parts of wildlife are going to do some work on it. There were some leaks in the roof that needs to be fixed. There's some boards on some decking that needs to be replaced, and a lot of general clean up and tidy up, which they promise they're going to do soon. And then we're going to look at where it goes after that is completed, which as long as they get into it fairly soon, it shouldn't take that long, but it will be a little while. But we can discuss them further shortly.
So it's looking promising then to move forward.
Yes, I'm not exactly sure when that will be. We all spoke, including the Tourist Association as well as yourselves, that while there's probably going to look at blue sky things, that it's probably going to take some time. But we told them, Parks and Wildlife, that they ought to be getting it open as quick as possible, because it's already taken a bit of a hit because it wasn't open this season. If it's going to be another season that's not open, it's going to make it more difficult. But there is some more work to be done. I've certainly been told that, and they did say that the Parks and Wildlife services will not be running it. That doesn't stop others from running it.
Thank you.
I'm not sure there's anything else.
No, I think you've covered it pretty well, Mr Mayor.
Thank you.
Councillor Radley.
Just back to TasWater, I just wanted to ask, I also find that figure quite alarming, given that the projects have blown out and the briefing that TasWater gave us on why they blew out, and that was based on a legislation, and our input into that as an owner council. I just wondered, we had good representation before with Deputy Mayor Bishop. I wondered what our channels are now actually to have input into that process and how that might affect us as a community or a council.
Councillor Mayor Bond, Jan Bond, is North West Coast rep on that now, and Doug Chipman is the chairperson of that committee, and it's something I intend to talk to him next week when he's here with another help. Of course, that was rather alarming to us, and talked to others, Craig Coastman today, and others was rather alarmed as well.
Just, Mr Mayor, just to follow on, isn't there not an upper house inquiry into TasWater?
Yes.
And when's is that? Have you seen any dates on that?
My understanding is that
Or do you think we should? The other thing should we be appearing before that committee?
I think that they may have completed that, but I'm not exactly sure.
Through you, Mr Mayor, my understanding is that that's yet to commence, and it was supposed to commence around September, if I'll stand corrected on that, and that's when the next meeting was for TasWater. So in terms of that, there's a growing conversation broadly in terms of the performance of that organisation, and the inquiry is part of that. But from the last briefing we got, there's substantial concerns which a number of the general managers will probably touch base over the next couple of weeks in terms of trying to work the way forward. Because to be in a position where we were liquid and then move to a position where there's forecast for no dividends for a substantial period of time, that's going to put considerable pressure on every organisation at a local government level in the state. Those more urban councils, even more pressure than ourselves.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I was just wondering if you could enlighten us with the Hunter Island meeting and update and developments.
Oh, that's the one that we haven't had yet. It hasn't started. It was supposed to be on the 15th.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Oh, thank you for letting us know. Thank you.
Anything else, Councillor Sondland? Okay, 7, there isn't anything to look out there. Come down to public questions. The Council encourages community participation in its meetings through the opportunity for public questions and statements consistent with Council core values. Councillors and staff strive to ensure all people are treated with courtesy, fairness, dignity and respect. We expect our residents and ratepayers to apply similar standards in dealing with councils. As Mayor, it is my responsibility to maintain the orderly conduct of council meetings and determine whether a question or statement is out of order due to use of offensive, objectionable or defamatory expressions. I ask members ask members of the public to show proper consideration and courtesy in these questions. And tonight, I intend to give everybody the opportunity to ask 2 questions if they wish. Not everybody will probably want to ask questions, but if they do, and then it is, if there's still time for people who want more than 2 questions, we can deal with those. Come to the front, or come to the mic actually, rather than the front, and state your name. Are there any questions? It's not scary.
This is scary. Rebecca Coppershock on behalf of the Forest Sports Centre. We did write a letter for the funds that you had for the roads and infrastructure program that was going ahead, and we just was wondering whether there's been an update on that yet. I suppose of late with all this rain, the lovely forest dirt has become red mud, and I'm just noticing more people having to use the road to get to the school and the shop and that. So we just was wondering whether that was taken into consideration for that project or part of, or how is that progressing?
There's a report in our agenda in about another half an hour or so,
Yep.
probably a bit longer. We'll be discussing that then.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Hi, my name is Melissa Wells. I'd just like to say I support Rebecca Corpshock's thing about the funding. I think the $100,000 you're going to spend on a dog park is probably a bit extreme. Probably be better spent on the people in the community. But anyway, that's just an opinion, not a question. I'm here about the community conversation roadshow that the council held in regards to, it doesn't actually state in this council thing that I have here off your website, but it was in regards to the wind farms. And it says, over the past 7 months, council has held conversations in Edith Creek, Stanley, Mulbanna, Forest, Orangetown, Marrawar and Rocky Cape. A big thank you to everyone who attended on these conversations. Council has many ideas and things to consider as a result of these discussions. Responses will continue to go out to people who have raised matters as they become available. 20th of February 2020. We then had a meeting on the 18th of June at the community centre in regards to this and the community concern. And there was a question put forward from a member of the community, and your response was, the question was it the council's intent to strategically exclude Montague, West Montague and Woolnorth? And you'll probably, they wasn't mentioned in that roadshow amount of names I was saying there. And there has been consultation in other areas such as Stanley, Mulbanna, and we are the people that it is going to affect, and there has been no consultation in our area. Is that a strategic plan by you? And your response is no, it was not a strategic plan when we went around for about 10 months, and the last one was February. Ever since then, we have been in lockdown. So you actually had that one in February, I'm not sure when it was, but you had a council meeting in February on the 21st. You then also held another council meeting on March the 19th, which people attended. And from my understanding, the council didn't actually close its offices due to Corona until March the 27th, 2020, is that correct? Yep, so when this statement was put out on the 20th of February, it was still 1 month and a week afterwards before you were closed, so I do not accept your answer as it was because of the lockdown.
In March we didn't, and we wouldn't normally do any public consultations because we're doing budgets then. We start them normally in February, and
this was
March,
a community conversation roadshow.
Yeah, but it's always part of our workshops. And in March we were flat out doing budgets, and we were doing them this year as well, so we wouldn't have done them then, but could well have started in April, May, and then obviously the COVID had come in and stopped us from doing those.
So was it your strategic plan to exclude them from that area?
No, it was.
It just seems like that.
Okay.
Now, the other question I had was in regards to the workshop that was held on the 13th of August 2020. Well, I presume that it's that part in the document. It states on here that there is lease to Agritas. When that discussion was had, was you present at that meeting?
No, I exclude myself from that discussion.
Yep. So I was just wondering, what does that lease to advertise entail?
I can't make any comment on that because I wasn't here, and I wouldn't make it because...
Is that in regards to the land that's part of the advertise project, or could I have some information on that?
To Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Through you, Mr Deputy Mayor, the circumstances, council has an ongoing lease and it has for a substantial period of time for a small parcel of land that is an unused recreation reserve at the moment. It is leased for grazing purposes. Council may consider to change that or review that in some time in the future.
So is it part of the 20 hectare block that's in the advertise development for Duck River Meadows, or is it a different piece of land?
That particular parcel of land was considered and is included in the development application, but that could change depending on the will of council at any particular point in time.
So that's the one that runs along beside the schools and along Grant Street?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would I be able to have any more particulars about that in regards to that lease, or when it began, or how long it goes for, or what it's for? Or?
I understand the question. Those particular documents are commercial in confidence with the particular arrangements around that lease. No different to any other lease that council has with any other person in community. But in terms of considering that, as I mentioned before, council may review that and consider that document at some later stage.
Okay, no worries. Thank you very much.
Any further questions?
Bevan Anderson from Montague. In terms of the meeting with Council and Montague and Marrawar community members regarding the Jims Plains and Robbins Island wind farm development, it was instructed to prepare questions and answers. Questions for answers. Can I speak directly to the person who answered my questions on that particular night? Because as far as what I can see from the sheet of paper that was given, a lot of the answers were auto made and generated. So, and a lot of them were all exactly the same. So I don't understand how you can actually put a question forward and have about 6 or 8 or 10 auto-generated answers for the same thing.
Well, if the question was the same or very similar question, obviously the answer would be the same.
The questions weren't all the same. That's what I'm getting at.
I said all similar, and my understanding is that there were a number of questions all related to a similar question, and so obviously if it was a similar question, the answer would be the same.
What about the questions that weren't even answered?
I'm not aware that there was questions that...
Yes, there was.
Well, we need to take that on notice. And
Through you, Mr Mayor, I would welcome to take that on notice because the questions that were provided.
That's not for me to actually ask that. It was the person that actually asked the question, and he's not here tonight. Right, so it's up to him to actually get in contact. I realise that, but there was questions that wasn't even answered in that meeting.
Did they definitely get to council?
Yes, they did.
Yeah, I couldn't answer that,
Yeah.
but we can check it out.
Certainly can, yeah.
If you let us know whose questions they were so we can get it right, that's fine.
Mm-hmm. So can I speak to the person directly that answered my questions? Because I don't think they was answered in full.
I'm not sure exactly who answered your questions.
Well, can I find that out, please?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the questions were circulated to a number of the staff and responses compiled. I'd have to take that on notice and know which particular questions they are.
So no one knows who actually answered what?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the circumstances are that the questions were forwarded to a number of team members based upon their expertise. I would have to go back and look at those questions and see which ones are of particular concern to yourself and then check with who responded to those.
Would you like me to actually read them out?
Yeah, I'm happy to receive those.
What will be the impacts of the area of a proposed Robbins Island wind farm project, including the detailed analysis of residential and rural property values alongside the health and the well-being of the residents? Who answered that?
I don't think we'll take that now, but we'll get back to you with an answer for it.
Okay, second one. Will council be commissioned an independent assessment of property values in the area pre-development and post-development to ensure that the financial well-being of the residents and ratepayers? Who answered that one?
Again,
We take that one on notice, yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions?
Kim Anderson from Montague. The council meeting on the 18th of June amendment was added to the Jims Plains wind farm when it was approved, which was 1500 megawatt. I attended the UPC meeting 22nd of July and David Pollington told me it was 750 megawatt plus 250 megawatt for land, care, schools, etc. But both were voluntary and the poster on the wall stating that. The General Manager also at the UPC meeting told me it wasn't not enforceable and had to be negotiated. The 25th of July in the Advocate, David Pollington stated 375,000 the community fund, 150 megawatts Jims Plains, 350 megawatt Robbins Island, first stage, 500 times 750 is 375,000. What is in this for Circular Head if the community fund is not enforceable and you can't agree on a dollar amount?
Well, we've still got some discussions to have with, obviously, with UPC.
But you passed Jims Plains with that stating that that was the amendment.
No, we stated that that was a note in the amendment, and notes are what we really want out of them, but it isn't enforceable.
It was definitely a note?
It was definitely a note.
Yep.
Right. Could I see that printed out, please, after sometime this week, tomorrow or something then?
Yep.
Well, it's in the minutes, so...
All right.
Yep.
And you can get a copy of those, that's
Yep.
fine.
But also, you haven't answered the question, what's in it for Circular Head?
Well,
If it's not enforceable, if nothing's not enforceable.
Well, we're going to still have further discussions with it, and we expect that they'll be paying a certain amount, and we still hope that they'll pay that 750 per meg.
But you can say, anyone can say words, but what about a contract?
But that's all we can do in the... that's all we could do, and so we're trying to get the best deal possible for the residents of
Well, on the
Circular Head.
mainland, I can't say the wind farm, but they've actually got a contract that's 75,000 a year, which is divided between 6 clubs, and it actually gets carried on every time the wind farm's sold. So it's been sold 4 times, twice while DAs and everything was going on. Third time was when the wind farm was built, and now the 4th owner. So how come they can have a contract and Circular Head people can't?
I'm not sure on that, to be quite honest. I'm not sure whether you can enlighten us any more with that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of enforceable provisions, if there's a separate agreement reached and both parties agree to that being enforceable, that is where it sits. In terms of the circumstances where council has communicated in a public forum the expectations on behalf of community, that situation has been recorded as a note in the development approval. You are correct in stating that the circumstances are that it's to be negotiated, is an agreement to be struck, but that's an ongoing conversation with the proponent based upon a further set of negotiations with council.
Well, he actually stood fair in front of me and said, Kim, it's voluntary. Voluntary.
So it's not enforceable?
Not enforceable. David Pollington said that.
In terms of participation under the Renewable Energy Charter, they are encouraged to have agreements with communities, and as you've raised, that can be materialised into a formal agreement. But in terms of the circumstances, that conversation hasn't been completed, and the proponent's probably correct in terms of telling you that it's not enforceable at the moment because an agreement hasn't been finalised.
So can I ask the question, when will that be done before Robbins Island is passed? by the council?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the circumstances are that's an ongoing conversation with the proponent.
Yeah, that didn't answer my question though. Will it be finalised before Robbins Island is passed?
In terms of the dynamics, it will depend upon the engagement with the proponent. If we are in a process of talking to them at this point in time, it may well be finished, it may not.
Yes, I wouldn't like to do my book work. How long has the council had the Robbins Island DA?
We haven't got it at this stage.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the application is lodged, but it hasn't been on public exhibition.
No, but the council's actually got it though.
No, the councillors have not seen the application
On
at
the
this...
12th of August, Madeline Skerrick, I think her last name is, from UPC rang me and told me that the council's had it for 31 days. Kim, they've got 42 days. So you've got 9, that's 11 days left. So who's telling the truth?
Through you, Mr Mayor, let me explain. The organisation, council, has received the development application. The contents of that application have not been shared with elected members yet because the report hasn't been finished. We haven't even got sign-off from the EPA in relation to being able to publicly exhibit that application for community's comment, and the time elapsed for that comment to actually be received and processed. So it is correct to say that council has the application, but with due to respect to all elected members, they have not seen it because it's not prepared in a report to actually be in front of council to consider.
So she was telling me that the council had it to make feedback. So who makes the feedback on that?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the conversation is the assessment team on behalf of the organisation goes through their statutory process to review that application. That includes referrals to state agencies and the like, and we have to get sign-off from the EPA in particular before the document can be publicly exhibited.
So no one cited it in the last 30 odd days in the council here?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm sure that the assessment team has been working on it every day in that space.
Righto. Oh, the council's assessment team?
Yes.
Righto. Righto. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Hi, I'm Colleen Murford. Are the councillor and councillors aware of the Victorian Supreme Court decision handed down Tuesday which found in favour of landholders in South Gippsland Council versus the Bald Hills Wind Farm? This case came about after repeated complaints to council of noise and health problems arising due to the noise emanating from the wind farm were not investigated. Council were forced by another court to conduct an independent acoustic study at a cost of $33,000 after failing to do this previously. To quote the South Gippsland Shire Council's Chair Administrator, Mr Essenbines, on Tuesday's verdict, as it currently stands, wind farm operators may be complying with their obligations under the Planning and Environment Act, but not the nuisance provisions of the Public Health and Wellbeing Act. We believe that this is something that statutory authorities need to resolve to avoid the situation that has occurred in South Gippsland happening elsewhere, said Mrs Eisenbine. The towers in question in this case are much smaller than the proposed 270 metre heights of Robbins Island. There are also only 52 turbines spread out as opposed to Robbins Island, which was proposed well over 100 towers. Research and modelling tells us bigger towers make more noise and more towers together make more noise. How can council consider granting planning permits to this project, knowing the very real risk of noise to adjoining properties may suffice a nuisance? The cost will be shouldered by ratepayers to do the necessary audits arising from complaints. It's not enough to defer responsibility to the EPA when it will be council paying for the audits required and legal action required from arising noise complaints. The Supreme Court decision and the civil case that is following it show us that wind farms should not be placed near communities. We have lots of wind and lots of space. What we do seem to lack is proper planning and governance on where to place the wind farms. And my question is, beyond this, we're being made an experiment. These have never been put on land before. So if they're already causing this much trouble with smaller turbines, is council taking this into consideration in the planning?
I'm not aware of that at all. As I said, we'll probably need to check it out. And yeah, but I'm not news to me.
Well, I know there's been no wind noise things done from my property, and I'm right in view and one of the closest people there.
There's only been 3 done. One at a person lives on Harvest River Road and 2 at Montague.
We just got one person asking questions at a time, I think.
Yeah, well, I just know that they've never come and done. They said they were going to. They've never done it. And these turbines, we're being made an experiment of, and a council prepared for the consequences of the probable or possible health effects and whatever that are going to occur.
Have you talked to UPC about it?
Yeah.
And what's their answer?
Oh, the same as everything. Oh, we don't know what size it's going to be. We don't know how many yet. It could be, it might be, it might not be. I mean, we've had nothing solid. I've been going for over 2.5 years to all of these meetings, except for the last ones, and never have I been given the same answer twice.
Okay, well, we can ask them on behalf of the people there, and we can certainly do that.
Thank you.
Any further questions? If not, we'll move right along to 10.1, and we are now, as part of the agenda, is for Council acting as a planning authority to consider applications against the terms of planning scheme in force. And so, Councillor, first, or
hand over to Ashley.
Ashley, thank you. Go through the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Fortunately, my iPad has ceased working on me, so I'm just going by what I can see on the screen and from memory. We have an application to convert some existing structures on a property into a dwelling, and then also an ancillary dwelling at 348 Tierney's Road. Thank you, Matthew. I have a plethora of reports now. Information overload. So an application for essentially a residential use on a rural resource zone block. It has been assessed and deemed to not comply with all the requirements of the scheme. Principally, there is a nearby, couple of quarries nearby. They don't meet the required or prescribed setbacks to that quarry, which is 1 kilometre, as blasting does happen at the quarries. Instead, the setback is approximately 100 metres from the edge of the mining lease. There's been no argument or representation put forward as to how they can minimise potential impact of the new dwelling in relationship to the quarries. Additionally, to the north of the property is also a forestry block, and they do not meet the prescribed setback to the forestry. And again, there's been no mention of any amelioration, so that they would not have impact on the forestry practices to the north. Given that there are these fairly severe constraints to the north and the south, there's also limited to no opportunity to relocate the residential use anywhere else on the property, as there would still be likely constraint and interference to the operations of the quarry and the forestry. Given it's a rural resource zone, the resources are given preference over any residential use. And as per the objectives of the zone, residential use can be approved within that zone, provided it does not conflict or interfere with primary industry developments. In this case, it's quite clear that it will. That's about as much as I can provide. Are there any questions from the councillors with regards to this application?
Thank you. Any questions?
We're on the question, on page 2 of 7 of the planning report, and it refers to clause 26.43, and that talks about the location. And I just have a question actually as far as the existing residence to what I believe is the west. That existing residence, when that was built, that residence there, because I see the location of the quarry from a distance point of view is the same distance. So how did you come to the resolution?
Yeah, so there has been assessment of nearby other dwellings to the said quarry and the subject site as well. We've looked at the approvals of those, and they are all 2009 or prior to that. So obviously prior planning rules applied at the time. Our Director of Infrastructure Services provides a good analogy that in certain days you didn't have to wear a seatbelt in the car, you do now. So new rules do apply, particularly since the power policy was introduced in 2009 to protect resources. There's been a lot more stringent rules put into planning schemes to protect resources from residential use.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question I'd like to ask is, they've been living there in the dwelling at the moment. There's a shed and containers there, so they've been living in that at this stage. It's also, I read, there's a septic tank there as well. Since they've asked to improve their accommodation there, they've had representations, is that right?
There's no dwelling approved on the site, so there's currently outbuildings which were approved of residential nature because they weren't able to demonstrate that they were for an agricultural outbuilding at the time. So residential outbuildings for residential storage, so lawnmowers and that type of storage has been approved on the site previously. So that's what they're trying to amend with this application, is to convert those into a dwelling.
Right, so they haven't been living there at all?
I couldn't tell you if they've been living there or not. They don't have permission to live there at this point in time under the existing permits.
Yep, no, thank you.
Any further questions?
Yeah, just one actually about the, you said that they've been asked, or they weren't able to provide the minimisation or amelioration, and I just wondered if they understood what that would actually entail in regards to the planning scheme, and if they've invested in plans and they've probably got some costs to this point, is there a way that if they can see clearly that this isn't going to go ahead, that we can inform them at an earlier stage of the process around what's the likely outcome, not that they've put up the costs and then this minimisation amelioration comes in afterwards, or how does that even happen when an applicant comes to ask
so
that?
pre-lodgement is always available for any application, and they would be walked through the arrangement. Thank you. Just been informed there have been 2 meetings or discussions held with the applicants in lodging the application, and it was advised that these are the clauses that you'd have to comply with or demonstrate compliance with, and no guarantee of a permit, and likelihood is also quite difficult given proximity to the quarry. But people are still free to lodge an application and see how they go.
Thank you. No further questions? We've got a recommendation here. Is somebody prepared to move the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Aldager. Second, Councillor Blizzard. Any further discussion? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. We'll go on to 11.1, the abatement notice.
Over to probably Ashley can deal with this one as well.
Going to deal with this
Yep,
one as well?
yep.
Yeah, if you're happy for me to. I
Yep.
should be right. Thank you.
Yep.
So yes, ongoing compliance matter for council for a couple of years now. I think council may have raised the issue themselves with us at some point in time. We've been trying to work with the landowner to rectify some damage to a dwelling that happened due to a fire. Those efforts unfortunately have not resulted in any improvement of the site, and there are ongoing concerns with regards to noise, safety of the structure, and potential for vermin to be getting into the structure as well. So it's gotten to the point where we need to probably take the next step in the enforcement action and issue or requesting permission to seek an abatement, issue an abatement notice to try and have the situation rectified. So, yeah, as I said, been trying to work with the landowners as much as we can. We've documented all correspondence to and fro, but unfortunately we haven't succeeded in working well with the landowner, so it's a matter of going to that next step and issuing an abatement notice. So we're just seeking consent to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are we prepared to move this? Councillor Alday?
So moved, Mr.
Second? Councillor Poplowski?
Mr. Mayor, this is long overdue, this recommendation. This place has been in some disrepair for some considerable amount of time. But they can make fire license just happens to exclude me, escape me just at the present time. You can remember most dates, but I can't remember this one. That's the sign of age or anything else. But be careful, sir. It has been in disrepair for some time, and there's been a number of complaints come to each and every one of us for a long period of time, and it's time to fix. All councils are supported.
Councillor Woodward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it is disappointing and unfortunate that this has had to happen. And as it says in the report, that it's been visited quite a bit over the last 2 years. And there's been plenty of time for action to be taken. And so it's really responsible for council to sort this issue out. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers? For or against? If not, nobody spoke against it, so I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. We now come down to 11.2, and I'll ask the Deputy Mayor to take the roll, and I'll move that.
I think we hand over to Director of Strategic Governance to handle this one.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I'll wait for the Mayor to make his way out of the room.
Yes, sorry.
Yes. So, councillors, have a report before you for consideration of council selling a property it owns at 77 Havelock Street. It's a residential block. Council's owned the land there for quite some period of time. In 2006, it was reconfigured and subdivided into two lots, with one of the large lots being part of an agreement with Rural Health for the respite home, and council's continued to own the residential lot during this time. Discussions to date identify that there's probably not a strategic reason for council continuing to own this residential lot. It's an annual cost to council in owning and holding the lot, and without a strategic reason to hold it, the best option for council would be to put it on the market for interested buyers. So with that, I present the recommendation that council by absolute majority resolves to go through the sale process. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Someone want to move the recommendation?
Thanks, Mr Deputy Mayor. I would like to move the recommendation to the board. It's the right thing to do.
Do we have a second?
Second that, Deputy Mayor.
Continue down.
It is the right thing to do, and it also helps the council's bottom line, getting rid of excess properties that we don't have use for. All on the council to support it.
Deputy Mayor, I'd just like to support what Councillor Oldacre just was alluding to. I think for our titles that we have got no strategic plan for, now's the time to move those parcels of land, because we are getting in the road of progress, so it's an important time to look at more opportunities like this.
So, more speakers for or against? I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
For.
Against? Carried. Someone grab the mayor to take the seat back. And Betty too. Councillor Kay.
Okay, we'll be up to 11.3. Oh, Councillor Kay, yes.
If you go to 14 and then back.
Okay, funding allocation now that we're getting from the government, and Daniel is going to take us through this report.
Yep. Thanks through you, Mr. Mayor. This report is to do with the $803,241 from the federal government for the local roads and community infrastructure fund. Just before I make some comments about the report, I'll note in the printed recommendation I omitted a project on there, about up the total of the four. There's 35,491, which is intended to be allocated to Backline Road footpath construction, which was one of the questions from Rebecca Corpshop in the public earlier, I believe. So,
yes.
So that is intended to be part of the recommendation tonight. Lorraine will have it on the screen after I talk to it. So.
Yep, got that now.
So Council, after receiving notification of the funding, had given opportunity through its Facebook page for members of the public to submit ideas for Council to consider. So on the 6th of August, Council had a workshop to look at those, along with previous projects which had demonstrated strong community support. One of the hard and fast criteria of the funding package was that projects needed to be delivered by 30th of June 2021, which was a determinant in terms of what could Council reasonably commit to deliver. On page 93 of the agenda is a list of more than 20 different potential projects that were submitted to Council. Unfortunately, not all of them involved Council infrastructure, so were not eligible. Some of them involved levels of approval from other infrastructure owners or landowners where there hadn't previously been a level of project rigour put in. That's by no means to say they're not worthwhile projects, they simply were unlikely to be achieved by that 30th of June 2021 date. The projects in the recommendation in the report, as listed, the Smithton Dog Park, a White Hills Tip Shop infrastructure, Eastern Foreshore exercise equipment renewal and path realignment, Yeagers Road Bridge replacement, and the Backline Road footpath construction. So, two of those in particular, the Smithton Dog Park and the White Hills Tip Shop infrastructure, had previously been presented to Council via a community-led group demonstrating support and project planning for the dog park, and via the waste strategy and public consultation around for the Tip Shop infrastructure. Others have been contained in asset management plans and have been able to be brought, all of these have been able to be brought forward as a result of the capital funding available. So the report for Council consideration is as presented in the agenda.
Just one thing I'd like to add with the Backline Road. We did state that if there was any further funding over from the other projects, because we believe that the dog park will get some people will be donating some time or money, which will make that cheaper. And we're hopeful that the 35,000 will be higher than that, which will mean we'll be able to do more at Backline Road if that's the case. So, just that they're relatively in the minutes so that we're aware of that was the decision of council. Thanks, Daniel. Somebody prepared to move the recommendation?
Certainly move the recommendation.
On the surprise.
Mr. Mayor, that's certainly worthy.
You've got to get a second.
Yeah, I'll second Mr.
Mayor. That's certainly worthy projects for our community, and it's good to see that funding going to projects that are worthy of our community. And I'll just hone in on the off-lead dog park area. That's a project that's been very well supported in our community, and it has been supported well in the last 2 years. And so it's great to see this project getting support. There has been quite a few people involved in a group that we met earlier, and as our Mayor said, that there's been offers of construction and offers of material to help this dog park area. So I certainly recommend this. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I concur with Councillor Woody, but also, as Daniel's mentioned, the workshop through and the projects picked out are really completable by the time and of use to both community in 2 or 3 different areas. So I'll ask for support as well.
Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Mayor.
And then Councillor Redford.
I'm standing to support the motion as well. I know there'll be some disappointed people with some other stuff that didn't get through, but having the ones ready to go was our main focus. Otherwise, they wouldn't have got done in time, and people need to be aware of that. That was the main reason why some of these other projects didn't get up. So I move to support the recommendation before us.
Councillor Redford.
I'd just like to again commend the team that had the background work completed, which actually allowed us to get such a good amount, and that's Scott and his team with the roads. And so the work that they'd done with the documentation and the strategy in the pipeline allowed us to get so much. And I'd also like to encourage community members like Stanley and some of the other groups that came forward this time with projects that fit within the criteria. And although it didn't, we have to have these ones done by June next year, and so some of the things in the pipeline got up. I think it's really important that the community work with us to let us know where those areas are that we can improve. So again, thank you to those who had the work done and that it was already completed for us all to benefit from this.
Anything further? I'd just like to reiterate what Councillor Redford said about our staff, and I think Daniel and his team did a fantastic job. We got more money than any other council on the North West Coast in this at this time, and there are a number of councils that are much bigger than our council, so it's that's really good news from our staff, and well done to everybody that worked hard to put this together so that we could actually achieve it, so well done. Okay, nobody spoke against the project, so I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. 11.5, draft public art policy report.
We missed one, Mr. Mayor. 11.4.
Oh, that's right, because I hit that other one before, didn't I?
11.4. Yep.
11.4. I got confused with 11 trees. The audit panel charter. And I think Matthew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our council has an audit panel and an audit panel charter that governs how they operate. We recently, well, within the last 12 months, we amended it to align it to the government guidelines, but there's been a recent minor change made by the Waratah Wynyard Council to their audit panel charter, and as we share the same audit panel, it just made sense to align ours with theirs. So that was to allow for a 4th independent member, to move the remuneration details into an appendix so that they can be updated administratively, and to increase the charter review period from 2 to 3 years so that we align at the same time. So with that, I present the recommendation for Council to adopt. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Matthew. Somebody prepared to move the recommendation?
So
yes. Do you want to ask a question first?
Yeah, just one quick question. The remuneration charter that would be moved to the appendix for administration purposes, that doesn't mean that it can be updated without the due processes?
No, it's basically to write the values that match the. So it says CPI at a particular time in the charter.
Yep.
So then, at the time that CPI is calculated each year, it can be populated in the appendix.
Yep.
So it doesn't change the amount.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I've got a question. Can someone explain to me why we need a fourth independent member and what's the financial implications?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the option is for a fourth independent member to be appointed, and the circumstance might be where there's a transition of members. You might bring a fourth member on, for example, for a period of time while the other one transitions out, or there may be discussions about having a fourth. So it doesn't mean a fourth is automatically appointed. It means there is an option of having a fourth. So Council could determine, as it has done in the past with Waratah Wynyard, that there was a period of time we had an additional member on for our panel meetings than the Waratah Wynyard Council did. So it just provides that flexibility. There would be if there was a fourth member appointed, yes.
That would be depending whether it was a council member or an independent person. If it was a council member, I know you was on there at one stage as a fourth member here, but would have been paid because we give an allowance to the council of that if it was an independent. And I see that if there was somebody that intended to retire within 6 months, they may say it would be a good idea to have another person there for a short period of time, just so that they get used to the work that they do. And that's the only reason. It's not intended to be more members all the time. It's only just for a short period of time while we're going from one to another.
Member. I can't see why we've got to follow when they'll have a member nominated.
They haven't got a fourth member.
Sorry, well, they've got the option of a fourth member. If we see one retiring, no, we'll appoint a fourth member that we'd be able to pick up pretty quick. I can't see the reason why we need to put this down in here. We can make a fourth member as soon as we know about it.
Well, we have the same membership as we.
Unless we've got a council from here on. And so if we had a fourth person, then it'd be on ours as well. Just basically just putting it so that our rules are the same as Wynyard, so that we can all in the same way. As I understand it.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'd also add that King Island share the same panel as well. So there's the three councils cooperating on this. But yeah, there is only 3 members and only an intention to have 3 members at this point in time, but the option is available.
Deputy Mayor, you're going to second it? Thank you. Have I got a move it rather? Are you going to have I got a second? Councillor Coe.
Any further
discussion required? No further discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Yes. Councillor Koski's against. Everybody else for it? That is carried. Well, now I'll go on to 11.5, which is their art policy report.
Over to Deb.
Deb, thank you, Deb.
Councillors, the purpose of this report is to seek Council's endorsement to some public comment on the draft public art policy and the draft guidelines and the draft advisory group operating procedures. The draft public art policy covers all permanent, integrated or temporary artwork in public spaces that's either commissioned by or in partnership with circular councils. The draft policy and associated guidelines and procedures will
provide a framework to enable council to contribute, support and promote public art to reflect and enhance circular head's cultural identity and enrich cultural life. The guidelines cover roles and responsibilities and procedures required to implement the policy. The guidelines also identify that an advisory group be established as a review mechanism to make recommendations to council on artwork that may be commissioned. The procedures for the group include their objectives, the membership and the operating functions. The draft policy and associated draft documents were presented to council's workshop on the 9th of July 2015. Public art can create a unique community identity. It informs or enhances a sense of place and can generate iconic branding for the area. Developing a public art policy is a positive step to ensure council has direction associated with identifying and installing public art throughout the community. Councillors, I present the draft public art report and associated documents to you to consider.
Thank you. Any questions for a start? If not, is somebody prepared to move the recommendation?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Polsky, seconded Councillor Rattler. Any discussion required?
Just one question, sir. What's the time that this will be laid out to the public for a comment?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it'll be 21 days, Councillor Polsky.
Can we have that extended?
You certainly can.
Because I reckon I'd like to see it extended because and a good media coverage to be able to get engagement from the community.
Yeah. That was my question. How are we going to communicate that? What and could we use some videos or some 2610 funding to get that really connecting with people?
I'm not sure about the 26 funding there, Councillor Evelyn, but we're going to develop a communication strategy so that we certainly cover all our community to inform them and provide the documents for comments. More than happy to extend the consultation period.
Councillor Aldo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Polsky, extending your thing, well, in how many days, I think probably need to put a number in there. With your indulgence, if you want to add it to the recommendation, that it be 42 days, given we've got all this forest things about it, and that gives everybody plenty of time.
Are you happy with that, Councillor?
Thanks for that. It's a great idea, and especially with our opportunity to communicate, especially 42 days with our opportunity to get the word out there through the art of our town during September.
So, Councillor Rattler, you are happy with 42 days?
Sure. Yep.
I agree with Neb with 2610. I think that's a really good idea. It would have been brilliant, but I don't think in the next month we'd be able to get that done in time. We put an application in and got it.
If we were able to get it, we just wouldn't get it in the time, but I think that would have been. Yeah, it'd be worth giving Searle, one of them down to 2610, a call to see whether it could happen, and if it can, well and good, but it'd be worth trying. Any further discussion, debate? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. We're now down to 11.6, which is our financial report.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, before you we have the financial reports for the period ended 31st of July 2020. On the second page, or the third page there, we received one application for first homeowners grant for July. We also have the closing funds available for the special committees, which are listed there on page 124. We have the comprehensive income statement with a current surplus of 7.9 million at this point in time, and that's because we raise our rates at the first day of the financial year, but compared to budget of a loss of 1.1, million for the year.
Can I ask a question while you're on that page? It's actual for 2021.
Yeah.
There's 8,600,000. Obviously, something to do with rates, but why do we put that in before we receive it?
Because we have an outstanding debtor on the balance sheet. So we've got a receivable on the balance sheet, which if you go on to the next page, it's the second figure down. So receivables are at 9.5 million. So that's how, in terms of accounting, the double entry bookkeeping that we do on an accruals basis. So that's why that's there.
Couldn't work out how we had all this money so quick. I thought, my God, she's good.
Yeah, no. So total community equity we've got is around $235 million. Just to make a comment there in terms of the discussion earlier on in the night around Taswater. At 30th of June, we equity account for our investment, our 1.55% share of Taswater investment. Last year, that was $29 million that we had recorded on our balance sheet. And with the write-down of that assets, it's actually come down to 22. So actually, you'll see when our annual report comes out that we've actually recorded a below the line loss of nearly $7 million regarding that actual Taswater investment as well too. So the only thing that it really impacts in terms of sort of our financials is actually our financial ratios. So when you're looking at total assets, it's the value of that's actually dropped overall. So yeah, so just to be mindful. We've got the at-call and fixed-term deposits on the bottom of page 126. The cash at bank is 11.2 million, including operating and investments. And the receivables balance, as said before, on page 128 is 9.5 million, which 9 million of that is made up of rates outstanding, carried forward from last year and what we've raised this year, which is not, so we've collected 3.79% in the first month. That's what that's telling us there. We've got sundry debtors outstanding of 355 with only 35,000 in 60 plus days. And we have the cash graph, which is a comparison of the last 3 years. So we've submitted our financial statements too on the 14th, last Friday the 14th, to keep with our statutory deadline of 45 days after the end of 30th of June. Tas Audit Office have not been lenient at all, or the local government office, in terms of auditing dates. So even with COVID circumstances, we still need to be signed off by the 30th of September. So here thinking that we're probably going to be audited at the end of September. The auditors will actually be here for 4 days next week, so we'll be going through that with all the staff downstairs. So hopefully have a positive outcome from that and be signed off by the 30th of September. I'll present the report for Council's consideration, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions, Councillor Woodward?
Yes. I'd like to hone in on Rachel, please.
Oh.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Would you have the numbers that applied for the first home owners for the last 12 months? And do you think that's out there for people to know about this?
Through you, Mr Mayor. We contact, probably about every 12 or 18 months, we get in contact with the real estate agents and the lawyers as well. So we talk about it here at this forum a lot. So the more people that be engaged in this form of discussion now that we're live streaming would be great too. But yeah, in terms of people going through the buying process, generally a real estate and or a lawyer in that process are there to remind people that that is available for first home owners in Circular Head. So yeah, so we try to do as much as we can in that space in terms of contact with people that will have contact with first home buyers. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
I just wanted to ask, with that $7 million write-down from Taswater, when you say that affects our financial ratios, what are the triggers that will then set for us that should send any bells for us? And is there a link with our depreciation for that?
Yeah, no, there's not. There's no depreciation linkage. So depreciation is what they call an above the line, which looks at your operating surplus as in normal operations, and this is sort of below the line, which is like the old extraordinary item. So it's one of those. What was the first question? Sorry, again.
Well, are there any triggers? I mean, with those financial ratios, what are our sort of comfortable where we sit comfortably, and are we close to that, or
and that's probably where our looking at our long-term financial plan again, and council is going to look at their budget again in October, November, so we can have a look at those ratios there after we've done the 30th of June. So that's been done and audited. By the time we look at that, we'll be able to have a look at those ratios then and actually see what impact that will have. Yeah.
And can I suggest maybe for the first homeowners that we do a visual or a short video again for, just to get it out and let people know, as another method of letting people know?
Mr Mayor, is that something councillors would want to do?
Yeah, I think we ought to be doing it. Yeah, council should do it.
Yeah, if council want to do a video, we can organise that if that would be good promoting their policy.
Yeah, we could have a couple of councillors saying a little bit about it.
Yeah.
Probably get Councillor Lois Harris to do some of that, being the youngest person. But because that is primarily, not primarily, because some older people could be first-time buyers.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We
Younger
have
people are probably more likely to be first-time buyers, and so why not use our people that are young?
No, I'd be happy to take that on board, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I'm sure Joe will help you put something together. Councillor
some time ago, last year when we was talking about budget, Councillor Harris brought up a good point, and I agree with him, that we should be splitting, as on page 126, we should be splitting materials and contractors. Is there any work being done to make that possible?
I'm not sure of the question, Mr Mayor. Can you
The question is to be able to split the expenses on materials and contractors, so lumped together.
That's just
we'd
how
like to see those separate to be able to see improvements and efficiencies and all the rest of it.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, Mr Mayor, this is just the recommended presentation of the financial statements according to the accounting standards, but if elected members want further breakdown than that, then we can definitely do that. And the quarterly reports probably give you a little bit, probably too much detail, so it's somewhere in the middle that you're probably looking for. So yes, we do that, and our financial statements, our annual financial statements, they are actually broken down. Materials and contracts has got a list of about 20 different items that it's made up in, and that you can compare to last year as well too. Yeah.
Can we workshop something down those things to see what's suitable? I thought the idea from the council was great.
Yeah, we can start, Mr Mayor, with I suppose working out a time frame for that with our other priorities is another thing, but definitely we can do breakdowns out of the system, depending on what you like. So, yep.
Anything further? Can I have somebody move the recommendation?
I move.
No further discussion, debate. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. 11-7.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Senior Management Report is presented there for Council's information. I'll just touch on some of the items. You'll notice that there's a recommendation there to confirm the 10th of December as our ordinary meeting for December. There is arrangements there as in relation to Council's closure over the Christmas break, looking to ensure the team leverages taking some of that leave and supporting the economy within the state. You'll notice there that there's some advice in relation to the Henry Hellier Reserve in Stanley. Community small grants for all those that are online and in the gallery tonight. They close on Monday the 31st of August. It's a great opportunity to get some inspiration from community in terms of those particular projects that they're interested in, particularly around mental health and wellbeing. There's some notes there in relation to social recovery team and the work that's been occurring in that space. dare I say, it's a watching brief, given the events that are unfolding in Victoria. There's some advice there in relation to the Balanced Walk This Way initiative. Nearly 1,000 kilometres have been walked. That's almost to Hobart and back. So that's a very good outcome for community. The Charts Festival theme is Home for 2020. The one that's recently been running this week and still is, Science Week in terms of the science gig. Really good participation, and there's been a number of suggestions made in terms of continuing those videos and virtual tours of industry, given that it's often very difficult to actually expose people to what goes on behind the scenes in certain places. In the youth space, video chat and connections is continuing. Chill programs running there, and 7up, noted in the agenda, is that they're having some difficulties accessing the building, but that's been resolved, and essentially they met this time for the first time for a number of weeks post-COVID. In terms of recreation, council facilities have been reopening, junior basketball, netball and hockey. Great to see progress there. The Smithton Wellbeing and Indoor and Recreational Leisure Centre, there's actually Movement is Medicine program. I'd encourage everybody to share that as much around the place. Emergency management, bushfire assessment work has been continuing, given that we've had good rainfalls, and if we get a dry summer, there may be fuels in that space. And there's a number of dot points there in relation to items for tourism. I would encourage everybody to support Stanley as the local district's nomination in Tassie's top tourist town. And I present the report for Council's consideration.
Thank you. Is there any questions to our General Manager? Councillor Aldo.
Mr Mayor, I understand that both Stanley Tourism top town closes tomorrow. Is my understanding closes online tomorrow?
That is correct. Yep.
I know in the correspondence laid on the table, we've got requests for support for a couple of sporting teams. When will we be workshopping and discussing the support?
I've talked to Deb, and I can look at it with their team and come back to us
Really
shortly.
soon. Yep.
What's confusing for me, sir, is some teams are negotiating with their area management teams and controlling bodies. For example, I would have thought the netball would have went to the capital committee, indoor committee, last 4 years to the council. And we haven't had any discussion on what support we should do. There's an opportunity to get some buy-in, even though they may not be using the facilities. We're not an open checkbook for these things, and maybe there's some chance of community contribution in lieu of some dollars. And I'd like to see what's happening right around the district to get a uniform process so that we can, everyone knows where we stand.
I talked to Deb about it this afternoon, and I agree with it. And I know that some groups have been given some relief, and said to Deb we need to give the same relief to all teams, not just one team. And so I know Deb's going to do some more work with it and come back to us, let us know what that is.
Well, my point, also, I'm grateful to hear what you're saying. We are in deficit mode too, through fraudulent, through frugal budgeting over many years, and idiot men of the financial over there, we've had some saving up, and we're using that money this year. I don't believe we can just hand out money without some return. And I see these sporting teams as a good opportunity to say, yes, we can help, but we also need help at times. An example could be that instead of, for how many dollars we give them, say $20 an hour could be an hour given back to contribution. and I know, Mr Mayor, you're getting on a little bit more in years and struggle around places like the Twilight on Duck. And it'd be good to get these people who've got money off us to come in and support us on those days. And that's the kind of thing, a bit of buyback by community, and we're just not an open chequebook all the time. That's what my theory is, and others can disagree, but I think we've got to start in small steps. We might change Australia if enough people look at us and say, well, it's not all one way.
No, I agree with you. I just think we need to be fair to each team and not give one team something and then another team something else. We need to give them the same. And we can't just give everything that they want. There's some things that's in those ledgers that we shouldn't be doing, and our staff's well aware of that. But they are going to look at it all and then come back to us. Probably the workshop shortly.
Mr Mayor, I'd just like to, on page 183, just commend the council on obtaining the grant for the Greenpoint Road
safety barrier. As I live down those parts and actively use that road, I think it's important for that barrier to be there and continue to provide funding for a dangerous stretch of road like Greenpoint Road. I will add though, after a few signs have gone up throughout the week and a bit of community backlash, that it's not 100 kilometres an hour, it's actually 60. So you'll see that pretty evident with the signage that's been displayed during the last week.
Thank you. How could you get a speed reduction? Anything else, Councillor?
Just that it is indeed welcome news that the Milkshake Hills boardwalk will be upgraded, and I look forward to enjoying that after mid-September when it reopens, and the school holidays might be a good opportunity.
Anything else, councillors? Somebody prepared to move the recommendation?
So moved, Mr Mayor.
I accept the Mayor and Councillor Kay. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. 11.8. And there's 2 lots of minutes there for Circular Recreation Advisory Committee. Somebody prepared to move that? Councillor Blue.
Second that, Mr Mayor.
Deputy Mayor. Any questions on that?
Mr Mayor, I noticed in the minutes there was concerns with you talking about what's the future. I was wondering if it's time that Council could ask the Rec Advisory Committee, which was set up to advise the councillors on things being outdoor or recreation, if they could do a review into where we sit with our area management committees and the combining or separating of committees to run our outdoor sporting facilities.
Yeah, I think we probably ought to have a workshop on it. If we talk about it at the workshop, would be the best thing first, and then we could...
Well, it's been raised in the minutes that they're worried about working through 3 committees and different things like that, and it might be a time. I'm quite happy to get a review, or suggest we get a review from the Rec Advisory Committee for what it was set up for, and come back and then we workshop it, or would you rather go the other way?
What was discussed, and was, you're right, I mean, if you want to have an event that's outside and inside, you have to talk to the outside committee, the inside committee, and then maybe council as well, because they've got to do that for the insurance or whatever. And so it was suggested that we probably tried to look at somebody from council would be the best person to get in contact. And so that one person could check on the inside and outside, make sure there was nothing on, rather than the user have to go to 3 different bodies. That's what we talked about there, but if we want to do anything different than that, well, we could do it, but I'm pretty confident that's what we discussed, wasn't it?
Looking at, as we have deferred the reviewing the fees and charges.
We have also discussed reviewing of the fees and charges, so whether or not we can do that all in one package, the fees and charges, licences and leases, as well as the review of the structure of our area management committees to make it probably far more easier for our users as well. Yeah, so that's all in the pipeline. Yeah, so.
Can you put insurance in that group? The layers of insurance, I know it's been an ongoing thing for the last 30 years, but is it time to try and be able to streamline the insurances and the impost on teams? Just something to put there as a note.
Yes, certainly take that on board, Councillor Poposky, but every club that is now required to have insurance, as well as council has insurance, and yes, I understand it seems a bit like double, but that's the regulation, so that's sort of something we can't change in those aspects.
Councillor Roby?
I think that it's a great idea that we do look into that. We've got a growing cost base of all our ovals and all our facilities, and if you're looking at the demographic change, we're going to have a declining volunteer base. So if we do look at that, we need to do it with a little bit of strategy and understand where the needs are. We might have to revisit that as a community what we can support. Thanks.
Okay, that will take a bit of work, but that can be done, and so...
Yeah, we need to start somewhere. Any further on the Circular Recreation Advisory 2 meetings? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Go down to 11.9, Circular Head Education and Training Consultative Committee. You happy to move that, Councillor Irvine?
Yes, I'll put it.
Okay, somebody second that?
Thanks, Councillor Holloway. Yep.
There's been a set of, well, we've actually had a meeting since then, and at this month's CHEDIC meeting it was discovered that despite various training funds being made available currently across the state, Circular Head is facing a shortage of training and training coordination. And could we invite the Minister to help support training issues, including access to non-deed funding registered training organisations, a skills advisory council so that the industry can have an input into some of the training that's being designed, and the training and assessment qualification of TAE, how we can get some more of those qualified people into our district so that we can access them. I think a visit from the Minister would certainly help put these issues to the forefront at a time where training funds are supposedly available, yet we can't seem to access them because of our lack of trainers. Thank you.
So, yeah, we could write to the Minister, who's the Deputy Premier, and see whether we can get a meeting with him on those. Do you want to send that from CHEDIC, or do you want to send it from here?
I think CHEDIC would like to be involved, but obviously the existing relationships would be important to see what you think is the best outcome for Circular Head.
Thank you. No, we can do that. Any further on CHEDIC, councillors? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. 11.10, which is Western Area Management Committee. Thank you.
Second that, Mr. Mayor.
That's got an AGM too, so
Yes.
we need to go on that as well. Thank you. Second for that?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Deputy Mayor, any discussion? Debate?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to, the first point in the minutes, business arising, it's emerged out, as you said at this table after a question I asked. The trees were replacement was part of the project, and there was money there to do it, so I back up the two councillors that was attending, and it'd be good to get those trees in when we can.
Thank you. Any further? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. We'll go down to 11, and this one here has got an annual meeting too, so we need to note the annual meeting and results of that. Somebody prepared to move that?
So move, Mr. Mayor.
Deputy Mayor, second. Councillor Kay.
Again, is there any debate or discussion? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. 11.12, Circular Community Road Safety Partnership. Minutes of the meeting on the 20th of July. Thanks, Councillor Rice-Harris. Second, Councillor Woodward. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this group can have enough, but you
I'll ask it anyway. There's quite a backlog for young drivers trying to get their Ps, and I wondered if this group could do anything to discuss with State Growth, or if that might be a platform where we could get a bit of a push along, because COVID's pushed that back and we're still going to face that same issue.
Councillor Rice-Harris will take that.
I'll take that on notice. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. But I know CHAP, they're actively involved in our district, and no doubt with a bit of push, hopefully we can get something through State Growth, because I think it is an important aspect to have trained drivers going on our rural roads, considering we've got all types of roads and terrains.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr.
Councillor
Mayor. In regards to the near miss out at Yans Road at Rocky Cape, has any of our councillor officers or you been out to investigate this area where the school bus?
Yep.
Thanks through, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, look, certainly I've been having a look at that one closer. Had discussion as late as just before the meeting today, just to make sure that's been looked at as part of the highway package of works. I've got a couple of pieces of information to forward on to the DSG officers, including costings for potentially looking at widening of the Yans Road Bridge and other things to open up that junction there where it's a bit tight for larger vehicles. So that's the latest put to DSG as a result of that near miss. So.
And also, did you investigate the Crayfish Creek area as well, where the school buses, that's been a notorious spot there for so many years, not just with school buses, with all high volume traffic?
Yeah, through you again, Mr. Mayor, I believe that one's part of the highway corridor also.
So
that was high on the list. I know when we put it through last year, and so I'd be disappointed if that wasn't run this summer period.
We need to keep on to that.
Is the Yans Road line of sight's a problem too, isn't it? Towards the east?
Yeah, potentially. Look, from looking at the details around the near miss, one of the geometry constraints appeared to be the turn into Yans Road being too tight, and then with the narrow bridge just inside would make it difficult for a heavy vehicle to turn easily. So,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if Daniel wouldn't mind sharing the information that he shared with me tonight on speed reduction. He's been working very hard on that. Thanks, Daniel.
Yeah, thanks again through you, Mr. Mayor. There's been strong sentiment from the council table backed by community concern to see a reduced speed limit through there. The initial response back was that the first pass was that it's not backed by strong accident history. However, I've been able to get further hearing, if you like, that they're going to go back and look at that further in terms of preventative measures. So look at it from a road safety audit point of view, not just on past accident statistics. So,
Thank you. And he finally got tough with them.
Thank you. Well, it was high on
this last year. I can't understand that it's where it is, but anyway, we'll continue to work through it. Anything further on the minutes of the meeting? If not, I do have a mover and seconder, do I not?
That's been moved.
That's already been done. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. We're down now to 12 of the second lot of public questions. Are there any further questions from the public?
Hi, my name is Melissa Wells. I just have a question in regards to the LRCI funding. I was just reading what things come under the guidelines, and I was wondering, could you explain to me how the White Hills Tip Shop infrastructure comes under that, or what in regards? Because it says bicycles, walking paths, planting, improvement to community facilities, repairing and replacement. I just don't understand where the White Hills Tip Shop infrastructure fits into that.
Could you help us out with that, Mr. Chairman?
Probably,
Taking notice,
or Daniel might be able to help out.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Look, the commentary in the report there, that's not points to give examples of potential infrastructure, but the guidelines are actually quite broad. It's perhaps more useful to look at what it does in front.
I did actually read them when you put them up last time.
Sure.
I was just wondering if you could point me in a specific area that it relates to.
I will do so if you give me a moment.
It's my understanding with them all, we all have to sit, now we've moved and seconded the motion and got through it. That's got to go to the department and they've got to tick it off before we get the money. So
yes,
we haven't got the money until it's ticked off by the department. If any of them don't qualify, we'll need to come back and spend it on something else. So
yeah,
that does have to happen. But
I don't disagree with it. I think that I think we could do with the tip shop. It'd be great for the community. But I also wonder for the $350,000 with all the issues with like we could have some closed circuit CCTV or some more paintings or improvements to community facilities.
But they do have to go on, and if they don't qualify, we'll come back and we'll have to relook at it.
Yep.
That's absolutely right. So the motion was to put them to the federal government, and they'll give a response within a number of weeks. If they find that it's not within those guidelines, they'll certainly give us that response.
So what part of the guidelines is it under?
I'll take it on notice.
If that's okay, rather than hold the meeting up.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, for your benefit there, Melissa, you'll notice on page 3 of that particular report, it goes through ineligible funding receipts cannot be used grant money for pay for business or usual activities. Community public art was unfortunately excluded. That's the last dot point. Road rehabilitation studies, transport planning studies.
Yeah, I just read it.
Yeah. Yep. Those particular things unfortunately were excluded because they weren't considered as part of that particular suite of funding that the federal government was supporting.
What is that comment in relation to them?
Well, in terms of they were the ineligibility criteria, and that's what we had to work with. We couldn't use the funding for those particular aspects.
Oh, I'm just going off what it says here. These projects must deliver benefits to the community such as improved accessibility, visual amenity and or safety. Examples of eligible works include closed circuit CCTV, bicycle and walking paths, painting and improvements to community facilities. I was just using that as an example.
Yeah.
I wasn't meaning in specific.
Might offer a clarifying question. Look, it's local roads and community infrastructure, so if it's, I guess, read as intending to be road related, but I don't believe that's the intent of the fund. So.
That's correct.
Yep. So you'll send me a letter with that answer? Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions?
G'day, my name's Isaac Koski. When Swirl was built, 2 of the squash courts were demolished to make space for a multi-purpose indoor recreation space. When Swirl was under development, there were already multiple indoor recreation spaces available as private enterprises elsewhere within Circular Head. Why was this space necessary to include at the cost of existing indoor exercise infrastructure as the squash courts in their current form, and why couldn't it have existed elsewhere?
So are you two gentlemen going to have a look at that, or do we want to
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think it's been well documented through the process that we went through to build a community wellbeing centre, and part of that was to include exercise program spaces. That was in the public documents that were put out in the community consultation when we first went to the community, when we did the open space planning and recreation. I know a number of businesses during the period of that project that we started on that journey have since opened during the time that we were planning that project, but that was been in the plan since 2016-17. So.
Okay, as some more of those spaces have opened since the...
A number of those have opened in the time, yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. And my second question was, since Swirl has opened, the facility has kind of essentially become the gatekeeper of the squash courts, which makes it difficult to utilise the facility outside of Swirl's opening hours. Is there any way or reason that this facility can't be put in the same, I guess, zone as the basketball stadium and then accessed through the stadium as it used to be when it was a standalone facility?
Sure. Through you, Mr Mayor, with COVID restrictions, a bit like 24/7 gyms, you can't just have single person access like you may be used to.
Yep.
I know through our recreation side, we're working with some people who are interested in establishing a user agreement to get access to the squash courts and have a club or the like that would actually take responsibility.
Okay.
But at the moment, it's only accessible during opening hours or by having a particular agreement.
Okay, cool. So it's kind of like a transitional thing at the moment then.
Yep, and I should say, for a period of time, we haven't been able to have the squash courts open because of the ventilation issues that we had. So it's only been pretty much, that was fixed at the beginning of COVID. So it's really only been the last couple of months that we've been able to have them back open.
Okay, so still a new issue, that's still a bit of teething issues. Do we have time for one more question?
Yeah, I'll have one more.
Cool. At Godfrey's Beach, there are signs detailing conditions surrounding leashed and unleashed dogs, but you can't see them until you're actually on the beach. The signs stipulate a couple of the rules to do with different conditions applying to your dogs, and a lot of them are around daylight savings time. So I think there's can't remember off the top of my head, but I think from 10 till 7 they have to be on a leash or something like that. Would it be possible just to get another sign at the top of the beach before you're actually down in the beach? So if you're already doing something wrong, you're not kind of breaking the rule before you find out it's there.
Through you, Mr Mayor, we do have the dog policy coming up for review by Council fairly soon, including on-leash or off-leash areas, and no doubt that will include matters such as signage, visibility, and how well placed they are. And all of those matters.
Yep. No worries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further questions from anybody? If not, I need a motion that Council resolve by absolute majority that matters listed below be considered in closed meeting. Councillor Woodward and Councillor Evans. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Aye. Against, carried. Another one that Council resolve by absolute majority to close the meeting to the public. Thanks, Councillor Harris and Councillor Woodward. Put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against, carried. I want to thank everybody in the gallery for coming tonight and also those online.